The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning, thick and official-looking, requiring my signature at the front door. As I signed for it with trembling hands, I could feel Miles watching from the kitchen window, his coffee mug frozen halfway to his lips. Our 7-year-old daughter Lila peered around his shoulder, her curious eyes wide with questions I wasn't ready to answer. "What's that, Mummy?" she asked as I stepped back inside, the envelope feeling heavier than it should. "Just work stuff, sweetheart," I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. Miles said nothing, but his silence spoke volumes. The same silence that had filled our house for weeks now, ever since that night he'd asked me about Jonas. It had started so innocently. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. Jonas Heller was just a project manager at my marketing firm, charming and attentive in ways that made me feel alive again after years of Miles's quiet, predictable routine. When Jonas offered to help with the Morrison account presentation, staying late to review my analysis and provide feedback, it felt like professional collaboration, nothing more. "How exactly did Jonas help you with that project?" Miles had asked that evening 3 weeks ago, his voice carefully neutral as he loaded the dishwasher. I'd been ready for the question. He reviewed my market analysis and helped me refine the presentation slides. "You know how important this account is for my career." "Until 11:30 at night?" "Miles, please. We were on a deadline. You of all people should understand working late." I'd turned it back on him, the way I always did when cornered. "Your software projects keep you up past midnight all the time." But Miles wasn't buying it this time. Something in his expression had shifted, a calculating look I'd never seen before. "I'm sure Jonas's wife appreciates him staying so late to help colleagues." The way he'd emphasized help made my stomach clench. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Just wondering how she'd describe his help if someone asked her." I'd laughed it off, called him paranoid, even suggested he was being controlling. My mother, Marlene, had been sympathetic when I called her later that night, clucking about how some men couldn't handle successful women. My sister Sophie had been even more supportive, joking about clingy husbands who couldn't trust their wives to have male colleagues. But now, holding this envelope, I realized Miles had been playing a longer game than I'd understood. "Faine," he said quietly, using my full name instead of the nickname he'd called me for 8 years of marriage. "We need to talk." Lila sensed the tension and retreated to her room without being asked. Smart kid. Too smart for her own good sometimes. "About what?" I set the envelope on the kitchen counter, trying to project confidence I didn't feel. "About Jonas. About the project. About what's really been going on." My heart hammered against my ribs, but I forced myself to maintain eye contact. "I've told you everything. Jonas helped me with work. That's it." "Show me your phone." The request hit like a slap. "Excuse me." "Your phone, Faine. Show me your text messages with Jonas." "I'm not going to be interrogated in my own home, Miles. This is ridiculous." "Is it?" He pulled out his own phone, scrolling to something that made his jaw tighten. "Because I've been looking at our phone bill. Interesting pattern of calls to Jonas's number. Late-night calls, weekend calls, calls that lasted hours." My mouth went dry. "Those were work calls." "At 2 a.m? On Sundays?" "Sometimes inspiration strikes at odd hours. You know how creative work is." But even as I said it, I could hear how weak it sounded. Miles had always been logical, methodical. He was building a case, and I was scrambling to keep up. "I called Jonas's wife yesterday," he said quietly. The words hit me like ice water. "You did what?" "Asked her about the project, about all the late nights Jonas has been putting in to help you." My vision tunneled. "You had no right." She was very confused, Faine. Said Jonas never mentioned working late with anyone. Said he's been coming home at normal hours, except for the nights he claimed to be at work events. Company celebrations, team-building exercises. The kitchen felt like it was spinning. "She's lying." "Is she? Or are you?" I grabbed the counter for support, my mind racing through damage control scenarios. This is insane. You're being paranoid and jealous, and now you're dragging other people into your delusions. Am I? Miles's voice remained maddeningly calm. Because Jonas's wife seemed very interested in learning more about these late-night work sessions, she asked for my number, said she'd like to compare notes. The threat was clear. My carefully constructed narrative was crumbling, and Miles knew it. I can't believe you're doing this to our family, I said, switching tactics. Lila can sense the tension. You're traumatizing our daughter with your jealousy. I'm protecting our daughter. There's a difference. From what? From her mother having a career, from me working with male colleagues, from the fallout when the truth comes out. And it will come out, Faine. It always does. I stared at him. This man I'd married, this quiet software developer who'd always deferred to my decisions, who'd supported my career even when it meant longer hours and business trips. When had he become so calculating? There's nothing to come out, I said firmly. Jonas helped me with a project. That's the truth. Miles nodded slowly, but his expression didn't change. Okay, if that's your story, stick with it. Something about his tone made my skin crawl. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Just, when people start asking questions, make sure you remember exactly how you want to describe Jonas's help. He left the kitchen then, leaving me alone with the unopened envelope and a growing sense that I'd underestimated my husband in ways I was only beginning to understand. Sunday brunch at Romano's had been a family tradition for 3 years. The restaurant was loud enough for private conversations, but public enough to keep tensions in check. Or so I'd thought. I'd chosen my outfit carefully. A navy dress that projected professionalism and respectability. If Miles wanted to air our dirty laundry in front of family, I'd make sure everyone saw exactly who the reasonable party was. Maureen, Miles's mother, arrived first, her silver hair perfectly styled and her expression already disapproving. She'd never quite warmed to me, though she'd been polite enough during our 8-year marriage. My own mother, Marlene, bustled in 10 minutes later with my sister Sophie in tow, both armed with supportive smiles and ready to defend me against whatever accusations Miles might make. You look tired, dear, Maureen said as she kissed my cheek, the endearment carrying just enough edge to sting. Work's been demanding lately, I replied smoothly. Big project deadlines. Miles's brother Theo arrived with his usual easy grin, trying to lighten the mood with jokes about traffic and weather. But even he seemed to sense the undercurrent of tension as we settled into our usual corner booth. So, Sophie said, cutting straight to the point as she always did, Miles, what's this about you harassing Faine's coworkers? I nearly choked on my mimosa. I hadn't told her about Miles calling Jonas's wife, but apparently my mother had filled her in on my version of events. Miles set down his coffee cup with deliberate precision. I wouldn't call it harassment, more like fact-checking. Fact-checking what? Marlene bristled. Your wife's work schedule. Among other things. The table fell silent except for the clatter of dishes from nearby tables. Lila picked at her pancakes, her small face scrunched with confusion at the adult tension surrounding her. Some people, I said carefully, have trouble accepting that their spouses can have professional relationships with colleagues of the opposite sex. Maureen's eyebrows rose. Professional relationships that require midnight phone calls. My blood pressure spiked. Miles had been talking to his mother. Of course he had. Creative work doesn't follow a 9-to-5 schedule, Sophie jumped in. Faine's always been dedicated to her career. Some husbands find that threatening. Do they? Miles asked mildly. How interesting. Before I could respond, I heard a familiar laugh from across the restaurant. My stomach dropped as I spotted Jonas entering with a petite blonde woman I recognized from his social media photos. His wife, Rebecca. Oh, look, Miles said, his tone perfectly innocent. There's Jonas. Should we invite them over? I'd love to meet his wife properly. Don't you dare, I hissed under my breath, but it was too late. Jonas had spotted our table, and after a moment's hesitation, he was walking over with Rebecca in tow. Miles! Faine! Jonas's usual charm seemed strained. What a coincidence. Isn't it? Miles stood to shake hands, his smile genuine and warm. You must be Rebecca. I'm Miles, Faine's husband. Rebecca's handshake was firm, her blue eyes sharp and assessing. Nice to finally meet you. Jonas has mentioned working with Faine. Has he? How much has he mentioned? The question hung in the air like smoke. Jonas shifted uncomfortably, while Rebecca's expression grew more interested. Just the usual work stuff, Jonas said quickly. You know how it is. Actually, I don't, Rebecca said, her voice carrying a slight edge. You haven't mentioned any late-night project work. In fact, you've been home most evenings lately. I felt the blood drain from my face. Across the table, Maureen was watching with undisguised interest, while my mother looked increasingly uncomfortable. Well, Sophie said brightly, I'm sure everyone's just confused about schedules. You know how busy work can get. Rebecca's laugh was sharp. Oh, I'm not confused about anything. Jonas has been very clear about his schedule. Home by 6:30 most nights. No weekend work, no emergency calls. She looked directly at me. Certainly no late-night project sessions. The restaurant suddenly felt too hot, too crowded. Lila had stopped eating entirely and was staring at the adults with wide, frightened eyes. Perhaps, Maureen said quietly, we should let Jonas and Rebecca get to their table. Good idea, Jonas said, already backing away. Nice seeing everyone. But Rebecca lingered for a moment, her gaze moving between Miles and me. You know, she said conversationally, I've always believed that some people should set better boundaries with their colleagues. For everyone's sake. After they left, the silence at our table was deafening. Theo cleared his throat and tried to make conversation about Lila's upcoming school play, but the damage was done. I need some air, I announced, standing abruptly. In the restaurant's parking lot, I called Jonas from my cell phone, my hands shaking with rage and panic. What the hell was that? I demanded when he answered. Faine, you can't call me anymore. Excuse me? Rebecca knows. I don't know how, but she knows. She's been asking questions, going through my phone. This has to stop. This? There is no this, Jonas. We worked on a project together. That's all. Right, a project. That's what we're calling it. His tone made me want to scream. You're the one who suggested all those late meetings. You're the one who said we worked better together after hours. And you're the one who's married, Faine. With a kid. I never should have. Look, it doesn't matter now. It's over. Don't call me again. The line went dead. I stared at my phone, fury and panic warring in my chest. When I returned to the table, Miles was quietly paying the check while both mothers looked like they'd been having a very serious conversation. Ready to go home? Miles asked, his tone neutral. I nodded, not trusting my voice. As we gathered our things, I noticed Miles had left his phone on the table during my absence. The screen was dark, but something about it nagged at me. Only later would I realize he'd been recording the entire conversation. Monday morning hit like a freight train. I'd barely settled at my desk with my coffee when my coworker Janet appeared with the kind of expression that meant trouble. Faine, honey, we need to talk. I followed her to the break room, my stomach already churning. Janet had worked at the firm for 15 years and knew every piece of office gossip before it happened. There's a video, she said without preamble. What kind of video? You and Jonas, last Thursday night. Someone took it through the conference room window. My coffee cup slipped from my hands, shattering on the linoleum floor. What? It's not explicit, but it's not professional either. You two are sitting very close, and at one point it looks like... She trailed off, clearly uncomfortable. Like what? Like he kissed your forehead, maybe your cheek. It's hard to tell from the angle, but Faine, people are talking. I felt the walls closing in. Who has this video? I don't know. Someone sent it to the office group chat over the weekend. Most people saw it before it got deleted. The office group chat. 47 employees, including our department head and HR manager. I need to see it. Janet shook her head. It's gone. But honey, the damage is done. Mr. Patterson wants to see you in his office at 10. I spent the next hour in the bathroom, trying to compose myself and craft a strategy. By the time I knocked on Patterson's door, I had my story straight. Faine, come in, close the door. Mr. Patterson was a fair man, but he ran a conservative firm with strict policies about workplace relationships. I'd always respected that boundary, until Jonas. I assume you know why you're here. I'm afraid I don't. He studied me for a long moment. There's been some concern about your relationship with Jonas Heller. My professional relationship, you mean? Is it professional? I met his gaze steadily. Of course. Jonas has been helping me with the Morrison account. We've been working closely to ensure the best outcome for the firm. Working closely, I see. He leaned back in his chair. Faine, I'm going to ask you directly. Is there anything inappropriate happening between you and Jonas? Absolutely not. I'm married, Mr. Patterson. I have a daughter. The suggestion is insulting. Then you won't mind if we implement some new protocols. All project collaborations must be documented with HR. No after-hours meetings without a third party present. And I'm reassigning the Morrison account to Sarah's team. The last part hit like a physical blow. I'd worked on Morrison for 6 months. It was supposed to be my path to senior analyst. That's not necessary. There's nothing inappropriate about my work with Jonas. Nevertheless, it's done. I need to protect the firm's reputation, and frankly, I need to protect yours. When I left his office, I felt like everyone was staring. Whispers followed me down the hallway, conversations that stopped abruptly when I passed. Jonas was nowhere to be found. His desk was empty, his computer locked. Janet later told me he'd called in sick. By lunch, I was ready to explode. I called my mother from my car, needing someone in my corner. They're all jealous, Marlene said immediately. You're successful, you're attractive, and they can't stand it. This is workplace harassment, plain and simple. But the video? What video? You said yourself it showed nothing inappropriate. So Jonas was being friendly. So what? Men and women can work together without it meaning something sexual. Her support felt like a lifeline. Miles is making this worse. He called Jonas's wife Mum. He's actively sabotaging my career. That man has always been jealous of your success. Remember when you got the promotion last year? He barely congratulated you. She was right. Miles had been quiet about my achievements lately, more focused on his own projects than celebrating mine. What should I do? Fight back. Don't let them destroy your reputation with rumors and gossip. You've done nothing wrong. That afternoon, I sent a carefully worded email to HR expressing concern about the hostile work environment and the unfair reassignment of my project. I copied Mr. Patterson and made sure to mention my stellar performance reviews and dedication to the firm. The response came within an hour. A meeting with HR was scheduled for Wednesday morning. I was leaving the office when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Check your email. You should see what's being shared. My hands shook as I opened my personal email on my phone. There it was, a video file with no message, no explanation. I clicked play and watched myself and Jonas in the conference room. The quality was grainy, shot through the window from the parking lot, but the intimacy was unmistakable. Jonas's hand on my shoulder, his face close to mine, the moment he'd brushed his lips against my temple after I'd told him about my fight with Miles. It looked exactly like what it was, an emotional affair caught on camera, but it was the timestamp that made my blood run cold. The video was dated 3 days ago, not last Thursday. Someone had been watching us, recording us, for longer than I'd realized. And if they had this video, what else did they have? The call from Lila's school came Tuesday afternoon, while I was still reeling from the HR meeting. Mrs. Henderson, Lila's second-grade teacher had that careful tone adults use when they're trying not to alarm you while delivering alarming news. Mrs. Varell, I was hoping we could chat briefly when you pick up Lila today. Nothing urgent, just some concerns I'd like to discuss. My stomach dropped. Is she hurt? In trouble? No, nothing like that. Just some behavioral changes I've noticed. It would be better to discuss in person. I arrived at school 20 minutes early, my palms sweating as I waited in the pickup line. Through the classroom window, I could see Lila sitting alone at her desk while other children played, her small face serious and withdrawn. Mrs. Henderson met me at the classroom door with a sympathetic smile that didn't reach her eyes. Thank you for coming early. Could we step into the hallway? Once we were alone, she folded her hands and chose her words carefully. Lila has been quite anxious lately. She's having trouble concentrating, and yesterday she asked me if parents could get in trouble for being mean to each other. The words hit like a punch to the gut. She said that? She also mentioned that her daddy has been sleeping in the guest room and that Mommy talks on the phone late at night and gets upset when Daddy asks questions. I felt my face burning. How much had Lila overheard? How much had she understood? Mrs. Henderson, every marriage has its challenges. I'm sure you understand. Of course, but I'm concerned about Lila's well-being. She's a bright child, very perceptive. She picks up on tension at home. We're working through some temporary issues. It's nothing that affects our parenting. Mrs. Henderson's expression remained carefully neutral. I hope that's true. However, I should mention that another parent expressed some concern after seeing something on social media. They were worried about what children might overhear if there are complications at home. My blood turned to ice. What did they see on social media? I don't know the details, but Mrs. Varell, if there are significant changes happening in your family situation, it would be helpful for the school to know. We want to support Lila through any transitions. The implication was clear. Someone had seen the video or heard about the rumors and reported it to the school. My private business was becoming public knowledge, and now it was affecting my daughter. There are no transitions, I said firmly. Our family is fine. I'm glad to hear that, but please keep in mind that children need stability and honesty. If Lila continues to show signs of anxiety, we may need to involve the school counselor. I picked up Lila with my head held high, but inside I was crumbling. On the drive home, she was unusually quiet, staring out the window with the same withdrawn expression I'd seen in the classroom. How was school today, sweetheart? Okay. Her voice was small, uncertain. Mrs. Henderson said you've been feeling worried about something. Want to talk about it? Lila was quiet for so long I thought she wouldn't answer. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, Are you and Daddy getting divorced? I nearly swerved into oncoming traffic. What? No. Honey, why would you think that? Because you fight all the time now, and Daddy sleeps in the other room, and you cry when you talk on the phone. Each observation was like a knife twist. I pulled into our driveway and turned to face my daughter, this beautiful, innocent child who was paying the price for my choices. Daddy and I are just working through some grown-up problems. It has nothing to do with you, and nobody's getting divorced. Promise? The word hung between us, loaded with more weight than a 7-year-old should have to carry. I wanted to promise, wanted to give her the security she needed, but something held me back. I promise we both love you very much, and that will never change. It wasn't the promise she'd asked for, and we both knew it. That evening, after Lila was in bed, I found an email waiting for me. The sender was Maureen, Miles's mother. Dear Faine, it began, with the formal tone she used when she was angry. I've spoken with Lila's school and offered to provide additional support during this difficult time. I want you to know that I'm prepared to do whatever is necessary to protect my granddaughter's well-being, including pursuing legal options if the current situation continues to affect her emotional health. I hope we can resolve this matter privately, for everyone's sake. The threat was unmistakable. Maureen was positioning herself as Lila's advocate, implying that I was somehow failing as a mother. The woman who had barely tolerated me for 8 years was now questioning my fitness as a parent. I forwarded the email to my sister Sophie, adding a message. "Can you believe this? Now his mother is threatening me." Sophie's response came within minutes. "This is getting out of hand. Maybe you should just apologize and move on. For Lila's sake." I stared at the message, feeling betrayed. Sophie, my closest ally, was suggesting I admit wrongdoing when I'd done nothing but work closely with a colleague. But as I sat alone in my kitchen, listening to Miles moving around in the guest room and remembering the fear in my daughter's voice, I began to wonder if everyone else could see something I was refusing to acknowledge. The next morning, I discovered that my private text messages with Jonas had somehow been forwarded to Maureen. Messages that were friendly, maybe flirtatious, but nothing explicit. Nothing that proved wrongdoing. The sender was listed as Sophie. When I called her, she was defensive and apologetic in equal measure. "Faine, I'm sorry, but Maureen called me. She was worried about Lila, and she asked if I knew what was really going on. I thought if she could see that your messages were innocent, it would help. You violated my privacy. I was trying to protect you, but Faine, reading those messages, they don't look as innocent as you think they do." The line went quiet. My own sister, who had been defending me for weeks, was now questioning my version of events. "Whose side are you on?" I asked quietly. "I'm on Lila's side," Sophie replied, "and I think maybe you should be too." By Thursday night, I felt like I was drowning. The HR meeting had been a disaster. They'd seen not just the video, but screenshots of text messages between Jonas and me that somehow painted our professional collaboration in a very different light. Jonas had apparently been more forthcoming with HR than he'd been with me, admitting to what he called an inappropriate emotional connection and requesting a transfer to another department. I'd maintained my innocence, insisting that any perceived impropriety was simply misinterpretation of a close working relationship, but I could see in their faces that they weren't buying it. The final blow came when they informed me that Jonas's wife had filed a formal complaint with the company, alleging that I had pursued her husband and created a hostile work environment. She'd provided her own evidence, phone records showing calls from my number to their home line at all hours, including one particularly late night when I'd been drunk and emotional after a fight with Miles. I barely remembered making that call. Sitting alone in my living room, while Miles worked late in the guest room and Lila slept upstairs, I made a decision. If everyone wanted to paint me as the villain, I'd control the narrative myself. I opened Facebook and began typing. Sometimes you learn who your real friends are when you're going through a difficult time. I'm dealing with some personal challenges right now, including a husband who has become controlling and jealous of my professional success. It's heartbreaking when the person you trust most starts believing rumors and gossip instead of supporting you. To those spreading lies about me and my career, you know who you are. Please remember that words have consequences and that there are legal remedies for slander. I will not be intimidated or silenced by people who can't stand to see a woman succeed. And stay strong, child, truth wins. I posted it before I could second-guess myself, then shared it to my Instagram and Twitter accounts. Within minutes, supportive comments started rolling in from college friends and distant relatives who didn't know the full story. "You're so brave for speaking out. Jealous people will always try to tear down successful women. Stay strong. The truth always comes out." Each supportive comment felt like validation, proof that I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't the villain everyone was making me out to be. But then the other comments started appearing. People who knew Jonas, who worked at my company, who had seen the video or heard the rumors. Maybe take some responsibility for your actions instead of blaming everyone else. I know Jonas's wife. She's a good person who doesn't deserve this. Your daughter is going to see this someday. Think about that. I deleted the negative comments as fast as they appeared, but they kept coming. Worse, people were sharing my post with their own commentary, and not all of it was supportive. My phone rang. It was my mother. "Faine, honey, what are you doing? Sophie just called me about your Facebook post." I'm telling my side of the story. I'm tired of being attacked. "But sweetheart, maybe this isn't the best way to handle it. Maybe you should take the post down and try to work things out privately." Even my mother was wavering. The woman who had supported me unconditionally for weeks was now suggesting I back down. "So you think I'm lying too?" "No, I just think maybe there's more to this than you've told me. Maybe you got closer to this Jonas than you realized, and maybe it's time to admit that and try to fix things." I hung up on her. An hour later, Sophie texted me. "Faine, I love you, but I can't support this anymore. You need to get help and figure out what you really want. I'm stepping back until you do." My sister, my closest ally, gone. I tried calling Jonas, but his number went straight to voicemail. When I tried texting him, the messages showed as undelivered. He'd blocked me. At midnight, I was still sitting on the couch, scrolling through the increasingly hostile comments on my post, when Miles emerged from the guest room. He looked tired, older than his 36 years, but there was something different about his expression, something resolved. "We need to talk," he said quietly. "I'm not in the mood for another interrogation." "This isn't an interrogation. This is me telling you what's going to happen next." Something in his tone made me look up. He was holding a manila folder, thick with papers. "I've been documenting everything, Faine. Every lie, every contradiction, every piece of evidence that shows what really happened between you and Jonas." "Nothing happened." "Stop." His voice was firm, but not angry. "Just stop. I know about the hotel room." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What hotel room?" "The Marriott downtown, 3 weeks ago, the night you said you were working late on the Morrison presentation." My mouth went dry. How could he possibly know about that? "I hired a private investigator, Faine. After Jonas's wife called me, after she told me about her own suspicions, we decided to pool our resources and find out the truth." He opened the folder and spread photographs across the coffee table. Images of me entering the hotel with Jonas, leaving separately hours later, our body language intimate and familiar. We have credit card receipts, hotel records, text messages that Jonas's wife recovered from his deleted files. We have everything. I stared at the photos, my carefully constructed denials crumbling. "Miles, I can explain." "No, you can't, because there's no explanation that makes this okay." He pulled out another set of papers. "Divorce papers. I'm filing tomorrow morning." "You can't. What about Leela? What about our family?" "I'm protecting Lila, and I'm protecting myself. I won't be married to someone who lies to my face while destroying our family." I looked at the photos again, seeing myself through his eyes, seeing the truth I'd been denying for weeks. "It wasn't supposed to happen," I whispered, "but it did happen, and instead of coming clean, you've spent weeks gaslighting me, manipulating our families, and destroying your own reputation trying to cover it up." He gathered the papers back into the folder. "You have until tomorrow morning to decide if you want to handle this quietly or if you want it to get ugly. But either way, this marriage is over." As he walked back to the guest room, I heard the sound of the front door. A certified mail delivery, requiring signature, more legal papers, more consequences for choices I'd convinced myself were harmless. I was truly alone now, and for the first time, I began to understand the full scope of what I'd lost. The law office of Morrison, Klein and Associates felt like a courtroom before the trial even began. Polished marble, leather-bound books, and Miles sitting across from me, calm, resolved, nothing like the controlling husband I'd painted him to be. His attorney, Sarah Morrison, laid out the evidence with surgical precision. Phone records, 247 calls, and texts with Jonas over 3 months, many late at night when I'd claimed to be asleep, credit card charges at restaurants I'd hidden in a secret account, hotel receipts from the Marriott, paid on my personal card, text messages recovered from Jonas's phone. I know this is wrong, but I can't stop thinking about you. Miles doesn't understand me. And the voicemail I didn't remember leaving at 2:17 a.m. I love you, Jonas, more than I've ever loved anyone. Audio clips followed, of me telling my friend Sophie I could spin this, calling Miles paranoid and controlling. Screenshots of deleted social media posts accusing him of abuse. Witness statements from coworkers, Jonas's wife, even Lila's teacher documenting my daughter's rising anxiety. Sarah's voice never wavered. Your husband is filing for divorce on grounds of adultery. He seeks primary custody, citing your dishonesty and the emotional harm to your child. I looked at Miles, desperate. You can't take Lila from me. I'm protecting her from the chaos you created, he said quietly. You'll have supervised visitation until you prove stability. The settlement offer was generous, more than I'd likely get in open court. Sign now, or face public exposure of every humiliating detail. I thought of Lila's questions about divorce, my mother's disappointment, co-workers' whispers, my shredded reputation. Jonas had been transferred. His wife had a restraining order against me. With trembling hands, I signed. The marriage was over. 6 months later, I live in a small apartment across town, working at a lesser-known firm that missed the scandal. Miles remarried, a kind woman who gives Lila the stability I failed to provide. Supervised visits are formal. The effortless closeness we once had is gone. Lila's dictated letter still haunts me. I love my mummy, but I was scared when she was sad all the time. I'm not scared anymore. The truth emerged, indifferent to my justifications or spin. I'd called it a friendship, a project. Jonas's wife called it an affair. It destroyed 2 families and left a 7-year-old girl wondering if her parents still loved each other. Miles had known the truth would win, and when it did, no amount of denial could undo the cost.